I mean, maybe all things considered, it's one of the greatest catches of all time. But such a tricky question to answer. Um, and it says recently saw NASA criticizing England players on Sky, but it rarely happens in Indian cricket where ex-cricketers criticize players on BCCI or TV. I think the main reason is, if I'm not mistaken, the BCCI still runs the broadcast. Um, we have seen the West Indies one was one where I remember where Mike Holding was I can't remember if he was told not to criticize the players anymore or was told if he did he wouldn't work anymore, but he lost his work in the West Indies. It's an interesting balancing act that you have to play, right? Um, we saw Harsha Bhogle have to interview N. Srinivasan during the World Cup in 2015 when Srini was involved in all sorts of things, right? And Harsha had to do the puff piece because that's the video that Srinivasan would, or the interview that Srinivasan would go, and Harsha gets slandered when Harsha would probably love to have Srinivasan in front of him for an hour and grill him. Um, so yeah, you do get situations like that, if we're being honest. Um, the boards are smarter now than ever before that they want to control. And India, I think India was close to the first board who worked this out. They want to control what goes out there and how the game is marketed. And obviously, we would rather that didn't happen. But even when it isn't independent, um, uh, sorry, even when it is independent, there's always a relationship between boards and TV. They just can't not be. And so I can understand why fans get frustrated. I probably was for many years. I think if you go back and read my old cricket with ball stuff, I was really frustrated with things that were said at times. Um, but that's where we are. And I actually think commentary will become more biased um, towards the boards or, towards home teams at times because those relationships between all those groups are just so strong and it's how things work. So I can't see that going away if we're being honest. I know that, I've been involved with some business stuff, of course, that you guys, some of you guys will know, things like 99.94 and, trying to put something together again at the moment and just my own stuff. When I'm obviously fiercely critical of many things and it causes me issues with getting press accreditation, with getting into grounds, with sorting issues out. That's when it causes me problems. When something goes wrong, that no one wants to bend over to help me. And I get that. I've probably flagged off one of their friends recently if it's someone who works for a cricket board. Um, and that's not even taking into the cricket stuff into it. So, look, it is, I don't think it's going away. England is quite different, but I tell you what, when we did Death of a Gentleman, Anish, I don't remember the Sky team rushing to mention it on air. I think Death of a Gentleman literally was selling out cinemas and was a cricket film. And if I remember correctly, it was mentioned once on Sky that summer. And of course, I have an interest in this because I made the film, and so I was noticing. The same with Duncan Stone's book about the class part of cricket and everything else. What's it called? Different. Sorry, Duncan, I've forgotten. But Duncan Stone cricket book. I'm sure if you look it up again, those books were not mentioned quite a bit on Sky. Um, and everyone knows about that book. Like it's quite a well-known book within cricket. I think it won a bunch of awards and everything. Um, so there are still elements that they won't do, but they do criticize players. You are right. I think, especially after what happened to Harsha, um, was it the 2016 World Cup? My memory is it would be very hard. Simon Doole's gone through this at times because Simon Doole he has to walk the line, and occasionally Simon Doole says what he says, and as we can all imagine, it doesn't always go down brilliantly with the people that he has said it about, and it does cause issues. It's a tricky thing to do. I'm lucky in radio, you don't get it as much. They kind of just shrug off. I know there are certainly some players who've been really upset with what I said on radio, but I don't think it's ever come to a point where it will affect my work or affect the rights deals, right? There are some TVs where that is the case, right? It might affect someone's work and it might affect the rights deals going ahead. Um, I remember when I worked for Cricinfo, there was a particular article they asked me to write, and I wrote it, and they liked it, and they were going to publish it. And then afterwards, they were feeling a little bit uncomfortable because I'd written about an issue that was kind of about rights issues when ESPN were going to be going up for a package, and they thought that my article would be held against them when they were bidding, right? It's the only article that was ever knocked on the head from Cricinfo that wasn't like, oh, we just don't like this, right? Or you wrote this, but it's terrible. We don't want to put it up. Or we fundamentally disagree with your point here about this player, right? And even then, I probably only had one or two, right? But that other thing was the only one I ever had. But they were thinking about it as a rights future. I think future, but maybe current. I can't remember what the situation was. But they were thinking about it as a rights partner, right? We don't want to be involved in this. And it was more hilarious in that case because they asked me to write it, and then I spent weeks on it, and then they didn't do anything with it. But the point being that you have to deal with that in the media all the time. Some of it you can see, and I think what you're talking about there, Anish, is the bit you could see. So quite often you can't see it.